Welcome traders, Patrick Head Trader, Trading123.net. In this video we're going to talk about your trading computer, the most important thing that you use for trading with the NinjaTrader trading software. So if you're thinking about trading on a tablet, forget about it. Ain't going to work. You need a real computer, whether that's a laptop or a desktop computer. You need something with power. So here's the basic requirements that NinjaTrader tells you need. Minimum PC requirements: 1 gigahertz, 2 gig of RAM, Microsoft Net Framework, screen resolution, and DirectX compatible graphics card, which you need for NinjaTrader 8. And then they have the recommended PC specifications. This is the low end that'll get you by, but if you're using 2 or 3 charts or more, it's probably going to crash on you. You'll have to restart the computer every hour. So this is a little bit better system. 2 gigahertz or faster, quad core processor, 8 gig of RAM. You'd be better off with 16 gig of RAM. 32 is the best, because NinjaTrader uses a lot of memory, so the more RAM you have, the better off you are, especially if you're trading off of multiple charts with a bunch of indicators. 16 gig of RAM is the way to go. And the DirectX compatible graphics card, we'll get into that in a minute. And then you need a solid state hard drive to load the software quickly. The DirectX graphics card basically is what powers your monitors and the graphics on your charts. So they suggest well, they don't suggest really anything as far as memory. But if you get a graphics card, 2 gig would be the minimal, 4 gig would be better, 8 gig would be best. Now the higher you go as far as memory, the more expensive the card. So I just built a brand new computer system because my other one was about 6 or 7 years old, and I replaced the motherboard about a year or so ago. And with the new NinjaTrader 8, I had 16 gig of memory, but I needed more, so I just decided to build a whole new system. So let's start with the graphics card. Now this is the Extreme. This is the graphics card I got. It's a GeoForce by NVIDIA, very good graphics card. It's got 8 gig of memory with DDR6. It's a gaming graphics card, very fast. I'm trading off of 3 32-inch Dell monitors, and I got probably 6 charts open on each monitor, maybe 8 on one other. So believe me, this thing handles it very well. You could probably get by with a 4 gig, but if you want to go to the extreme, and they're not cheap. This card cost me $400, and but you could get by with a 4 gig. So that's the graphics card. Now we'll talk about the motherboard. Okay, here's the motherboard I got. It's a gigabyte. I usually go with ASUS, but this gigabyte motherboard was just a little bit better than the ASUS motherboard. And I've been building computers for over 20 years, my own computers. And this is a pretty awesome motherboard. You can go to Amazon and look it up. It was around $300. So you could probably get one for around $200 that will do just as well. This one supports 9th and 8th generation Intel Core processors. Reason I got this one has 12+1 phase digital VRM solutions with DR MOS, which was way better than what the Asus had. And this has, you can put 64 gigabyte of memory in if you want. And then these slots here, they're all covered until you fill them with a graphics card, so dust or nothing gets in there. And it's a pretty badass motherboard. So works for me. It's got USB 2 and 3. So that's the motherboard. But you don't have to spend, like I said, it was $299. Probably for about 200 bucks you can get a decent motherboard. Something that, you know, supports the new chips. Now the next most important thing is your memory. You know, memory is right now, it's a DDR4. You know, my older computer I think had DDR2 because it was 6 years old, or DDR3 maybe. So it's a lot faster memory, and I got this Hyper Fury 32 gig. It's two 8 gigabyte cards that pop into the motherboard, or two 16 gigabyte. So you can get various sizes, and I can expand my motherboard. It'll go up to 64 gigabyte, but 32 it runs fine when I'm running NinjaTrader full blast. Basically I'm using let me look. I'm using about 16% of my 32 gigabyte of memory. And then we get to the CPU, we'll talk about that. So like I said, your memory is your most important thing. You want to go with at least 16 gigabyte of DDR4 memory. 8 gigabyte will work, but you may have some lockups. So 16 gigabyte is a lot better. Memory's pretty cheap right now. I got 32 gig for 140 bucks. So it's pretty good. And then the next most important thing is your CPU. I went with this Intel Core i7 9700 processor with 8 cores. You could get a 4-core, be a little cheaper, but this was like 360 bucks. I went with a higher end. I mean, you know, the i8 and 9 chips are like 500 bucks. I didn't want to spend that much, so you want at least 4 cores. 8 cores is better. And this powers the machine, works well. It's well worth the investment. So make sure you get at least an i7 chip. On the cheaper end, you could go with an i5. You know, if you went with an i5 with 32 gig of memory, you know, that's a pretty good. Your memory and your chip is your most important thing, as I said, along with your graphics card. So that's the chip. So as NinjaTrader suggests that you have a solid state drive, and they got this new little dinky drive, 500 gigabyte, looks like a memory chip. And it's a Samsung, which is pretty good, top of the line, solid state drive, 500 gigabyte. And this was one of the top rated, you know, solid state drives. It was 100 bucks, which is pretty cheap. This thing just slides into the motherboard. One thing you got to make sure is that your motherboard can handle it, because all motherboards are not compatible with this M2 NVMe interface. So you got to make sure your motherboard handles it. I mean, you could even get a 1 terabyte for $179. I just went with the 500 gig. It works. You could get a 250 for 69. And Amazon has about the best prices because there's a local computer store near me. But you know, when I bought this all this software to upgrade my computer and built a new one, it was during the COVID crisis, and a lot of the stores did not have this stuff in stock, and it was like you had to wait 4 to 6 weeks. So, you know, Amazon's pretty quick on delivery, 1 or 2 days, boom, it's at your house on the door, and you build a system if you know how, or have someone build it for about 100, 200 bucks. So that's the solid state drive. It allows your computer to handle the Windows 10 environment, boots everything up quick, and keeps it operating nice and fast. So then you need a hard drive for backup. So hard drives for backup are pretty cheap. As you see here, this one was $45. So basically it's a 1 terabyte hard drive. It's a SATA drive, so it's a little faster. It's got 64 mega cache. It's really small. You know, they make these a lot smaller than they used to. And, you know, a great price. You can even go up to a 2 terabyte if you wanted, if you got a lot of files on your computer, for $52 compared to $44. But I don't need a 2 terabyte, so I just went with the 1 terabyte. You could even go with another 500 gig, but if you got like a lot of pictures or drone video or your GoPro stuff on your computer, you're going to want a 1 terabyte. So you need that. So now you have all these components and you don't want your computer to overheat. So you need one of these CPU coolers. Corsair makes a good one, and this was, you know, one of the top of the line better ones out there. It's liquid CPU cooler. I've had these now probably for about 6-8 years. Never leaks, never had an issue with either one of them on my old computer or new one. This has a 240 millimeter radiator and dual 120 milliliter fans to keep the CPU cool, and it works with Intel and AMD. They do offer some that are a little cheaper, smaller size radiator and smaller size fans, but you want this to keep your computer cool, and it even has a fancy little light on it if you want to get tricky. So you need one of these to overheat, so your computer don't overheat. Believe me, about 10 years ago I had a computer overheat on me, melted the chip onto the motherboard, and it wasn't pretty. My computer was in for service for about 3 or 4 days, and so you want one of these in today's technology. You're building a machine that'll probably last you 3 to 8 years. The only thing you'd have to upgrade is if something broke. Maybe this broke after a few years, or you wanted to expand your memory, or you needed another hard drive, or something happened to your motherboard. But otherwise you're good to go for, like, my last computer I had for 7-8 years, so I was overdue. And then the next thing you need is let's look at the, you need a power supply to power it all. So you need a good power supply to power all your components inside your computer, the motherboard, the graphics card, and everything else. And you want something that's 80 plus gold certified, fully modular power supply. And it's got to be at least 800 to 850 watt. I had a 1,000 watt system on the last computer that lasted for 7 years, which was really good. But years ago I went with 600 watt. Guy told me when I was building a computer, you only need 600 watts. You know, you're just a gamer. And so about a year and a half later, my computer, when it went to start, it was like really sluggish, and it would just like it was running out of gas. And then one day it didn't start. Took it to the computer store. The guy plugs a thing in the back of the power spec here, the cord, and it reads like one of those electrical things you plug into an outlet. And he says your power supply is bad. So like I said, it didn't last long. So for the investment, these are about 150 bucks. You want to get a good name brand one, Crosshair, or some of the other ones, Thermal Take, one of the top of line ones. You don't want to get something that's cheap because you'll just be replacing it less than a year. So this will keep your computer running nice and smooth, won't overheat, and it'll power everything for you. And then the last thing you need is a case to power it all. So I got this back in April. This is an Antec 101 Silent Performance Series mid-tower case. Keeps everything nice and quiet. It'll fit my fans. It was like 110 bucks, I guess. It's got lots of storage in the middle, and it's a pretty awesome case. Nice and quiet, because you don't want to sit there and listen to your computer humming all day long. And it has a space in here where it'll store your solid state drives. So I put 2 solid state drives in. So plenty of room for your hard drives and solid state drives in these bays here. Then your power supply goes in the bottom. Your motherboard goes in here. And the reason I like this case is it had 4 USBs on the front. You can never have enough USBs. And then a controller for the fan. And so that's why I got it. And you know, the door opens up. You can open up the door to let some air in. And it's just a, you know, nice quiet case. And then the last thing you need is Windows 10. So that's how to build a custom computer. And the components that you would need. I think my system, I think, was, you know, a little over 2,000. You could probably, you know, go to Best Buy or some of the computer stores and probably get a decent system with at least 16 megabyte of memory and a 4 megabyte of graphics card for about probably 1,400 bucks. You know, maybe a little more. They have those custom gaming computers, you know, but it's an investment that'll last you a long time, and there's nothing worse than having a computer that doesn't operate and function every day and you miss a bunch of trades. Believe me, I went through that when my battery went out on my older computer, the power supply died, and then when my motherboard blew up, you know, I do have a backup laptop, but then, you know, luck would have it, the screen goes on my laptop, and those aren't easy to get. And, you know, so I was without a computer for like 5 days. So now here is, if you were going to get a laptop, you know, I prefer a 17-inch screen. HP has good laptops. The laptop that I currently have now is almost 9 years old, and I replaced the screen 3 years ago, and it still works pretty good, except for it only has it has a low-end graphics card, and I think it only has 4 gigabyte of RAM. So I just use it as a backup. But this would be a pretty kick-ass system to get. It's a gaming computer with the i7 chip. And one thing you want to know about with a laptop is that they overheat. And this one has wide vents in the bottom that distribute the airflow. It'll keep your computer cool. So if you were going to get a bare bone minimum system, you could get something like this with the i7 chip, GeoForce GTX graphics card. It's got a 250 gigabyte solid straight drive, 16 gig of RAM, which is expandable to 32. So it's a kick-ass system. So it costs you about $1,200. So yeah, this one has a 6 gigabyte graphics card. So that's better than 4. That'd probably be all you need. So check this out on Amazon. It's the HP Pavilion gaming laptop. I'm pretty much going to order it to replace my previous HP laptop, which weighs probably about 14 pounds because it's so old. So I hope this information helped you on if you're going to upgrade your computer, on what to do, where to spend the money on. You know, you want to spend it on the memory and the CPU. That's your most important thing, and the graphics card. Those are your three most important components: graphics card, memory, and the CPU. Because you need the graphics to power all the data and charts in NinjaTrader so you don't have any lockups. So again, hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions, email us at support@trading123.net.